Salvador Dali was the most eccentric artist of the 20th century. Even if you consider yourself a person far from the art world, you heard his name at least once. And it's not without a reason. Let me tell you about his most famous paintings. The Raphaelesque head exploding was inspired by atomic bombs dropped on August 1945 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Dali was fascinated by the world of physics. He closely followed all the achievements of nuclear science. He wanted to depict the smallest particles that make up matter. Elephants can be seen in many of his paintings. They symbolize contradiction or conflict because their long and thin legs are much weaker than their big and heavy bodies. In this painting, Dali hints at the Sigmund Freud's dream about the funeral of the Pope. Thanks to a Geopoliticus child watching the birth of a new man, Dali became famous in USA. Geopolitics appeared as a science at that time quite recently and was in a childlike state. The new man is a new civilization and a new world order, and he's supposed to be born not as a child, but as a strong, athletic man. Salvador Dali had a muse. It was his wife, Gala. He called her his goddess. In this painting he portrayed her looking into the distance. Judging by the fact that she is half-dressed and her hair is wet, she just took a bath. If you look closely, you can see a bust of Voltaire between the arches. Dali considered himself to be a Catholic, but later said that he could not become a true believer. However, this didn't stop him from creating paintings that were amazing in terms of their impact on the viewer and the power of religious feelings. He once said, "Unbelieving genius is more useful for religion than believing mediocrity." At the first glance at this picture, you may get the impression that the canvas is large, but you are mistaken. In fact, this painting is only 6 by 8 centimeters. Impressive, isn't it? How did he do that is a valid question. The woman in this portrait is his wife Gala. Dali used their joint photo as a reference. Here you can see a monster trying to tear itself apart. The second half of the painting's name was added after the Spanish Civil War broke out in 1936. Dali positioned himself as an apolitical artist, but couldn't completely abandon politics in his paintings. In his youth, Dali admired the work of Pablo Picasso and wanted to get closer to his level of skill. Perhaps this painting is a kind of response to the once idol of Dali. By the way, Dali himself was a narcissist, but he didn't hide it and was even proud of it. The story of this painting began when someone gave Dali a box of colored pencils as a gift. The box depicted Venus de Milo, and in her Dali saw something similar to the face of his old friend, the famous Spanish bullfighter Manuel Rodriguez Sanchez. He was the only one who saw it, but he drew this painting anyway. This painting again depicted Dali's wife and muse Gala. At the time he made it, he was obsessed with the theory of atomic decay. The very idea that all matter consists of the smallest particles that do not even touch each other deeply struck him and inspired him to create this painting. Before Gala, Dali's muse was his sister, Anna Maria, whom he portrayed in his painting Young Woman at a Window. Despite the fact that then he was only 21 years old and he was just learning to draw, even the master wouldn't be ashamed of this painting. In this painting, Dali tried to portray the divinity as he understands it. At first glance, it may seem that the facial features are a little rough and unfinished, but the longer you look at this picture, the more beautiful and peaceful it seems. The Burning Giraffe was painted by Dali in 1937, a year after the Spanish Civil War broke out. When it began, he left Spain and wandered around the world. This painting is another example of how politics invaded his work sometimes. The Temptation of Saint Anthony became the harbinger of so-called classical or Renaissance period of Dali. It was painted for the competition, the condition of which was to create a painting for the movie, which would depict a tempted saint. He lost the competition due to the jury bias. Salvador Dali's painting, The Face of War, was painted by the artist in 1940 in California and became a Dali's reaction to the horrors of the Civil War, which in just 3 years tore his native Spain in half. The largest amount of money that was offered for a painting by Salvador Dali is $127 million. This is exactly the price of this painting. In a 2006 poll, 29% of Scots named this canvas as their favorite, despite the fact that the Spanish government was once heavily criticized for spending so much money on one painting. This is one of Dali's most forged paintings, which he didn't mind because he thought that this is the proof of his success. Also, this painting is actually a portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Just take a few steps away from the painting and you'll be able to see his face. Dali was an ardent admirer of Sigmund Freud. He revered him so much that he even called him his father, and his book, The Interpretation of Dreams, the most important book in his life. The painting is an illustration for this book. And finally, the most famous painting by Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Memory, or how people used to call it, Soft Watch. This image appeared to Dali in that short moment when he turned on the light in his workshop. When Gala saw the finished painting, she said, "Everyone who sees this painting once will never be able to forget it." This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.